unless there's new amendments that weren't communicated to the board.
Okay. Is there any new amendments, Ms. Baldwin?
Other than the changes I submitted earlier?
Yes.
No. Robert's Rules of Order did say that you can make amendments to motions to insert words.
Yes, absolutely, you can. It's just whether the board seconds it and whether the board approves it. That's correct.
Okay.
You did receive a second.
So at this point, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. And going next to the, excuse me just 1 second. The August 2nd, 2012 work session. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion?
I would like to discuss the portion of the minutes regarding the solar project where Mr. Campbell did confirm that the $13,000 amount Ms. Baldwin referred to was inaccurate and that amount was not used to pay for anything. That is not what Mr. Campbell said, correct, Mr. Campbell?
That is correct. I didn't have a chance to review these before tonight, and that is not correct. What I said was, and for clarification on that, was that I was not aware that there was any that I knew there was no $13,000 payment to our law firm to, quote, negotiate a contract. But I didn't say that $13,000 was not used for anything because I didn't know that at the time.
Would it be correct?
So it would be correct to say that $13,000 was not for legal fees for contract negotiation. That would be correct.
Thank you.
Sure. I appreciate the clarification.
So, I'm in the motion to insert the change Mr. Campbell stated.
Okay.
The motion would be amended to state that Mr. Campbell did confirm that the $13,000 amount was not for a legal fee to negotiate the contract.
All right, so we need to vote on that amendment? Or
Yes, it would be appropriate to vote on the amendment and then you would vote on the
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
To the amendment, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes with the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, I think we've covered everything in the action agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now we are moving on to reports. The first report is the school calendar. Ms. Swan.
Yes, sir. We are making plans for our calendar for 2013-14. We have been reviewing the new legislation that was effective July 1st, 2013. A couple of the changes would be that the big change for us is the verbiage that we must have a minimum of 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction. In past law, it was the word and, so now we have the choice. So we are currently reviewing what we feel is the non-negotiable amount of hours needed for instruction, for professional development, and for educators to be involved in professional learning communities. So that is part of our decision making as we work with our committee. We have a stakeholder group of 31 that includes parents, students, educators. We will have open meetings on September 18th, October 2nd, and we'll create a draft. And then we want more parents and more staff input, so we will have a survey for everyone to participate in if they choose. We'll collect those results, make final revisions to a draft calendar that we will present to you in the November meeting, but we would also have a prior information session just to share that information for that final draft after October 23rd's last calendar meeting. So we're planning 3 meetings and then an information session for you all. And most importantly, a survey to get additional feedback from staff and students and families.
Any questions?
Could I get
Yes,
a repeat?
Ms. Brandon.
Thank you. Would you repeat the dates, please? September 18th?
September 18th, October 2nd, and October 23rd.
Thank you. 3 or 1? October 23?
23.
Okay.
Mr. Sizemore, you want to ask a question? I was going to ask that question. Oh, okay. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Thank you very much for that report. Okay. Our next report is maintenance work from
I was recently made aware that our maintenance department, and I talked a lot to the superintendent about unsung heroes and efficiency and honesty, dedication, and I've said that a lot about our maintenance department. I recently was made aware that this particular department has been falsely accused in public regarding the intentional shredding of documents to prevent an investigation, and I put that in quotation marks, of past work orders. I heard a public comment just recently, and that particular person was asking for honesty, transparency, and to tell the truth. So for the sake of that, I want to say this publicly, and I'm saying to the public, this is honesty. As you may recall, at the August board meeting, the board was scheduled to approve the semi-annual disposition of records. However, because a question was raised regarding some of these records, deposition was not approved and no records were disposed of. That's how we handle things. We get a question out in the public, question about safety, first and foremost, we put brakes on. That's how we handle things in Buncombe County Schools. I love the word transparency. Hear it all the time. But what concerns me at 57 years old is how the definition of transparency fits the person using the term. This is transparency. Also, at the August 2nd board meeting, Mr. Don Yelton, I see Mr. Yelton back there, provided me with a public information request after the board meeting, and he wanted to view work orders. Presumably, those included the original schedule for disposal, and by the way, those included work orders 2008-2009 school year, 4 years ago. His request was conveyed to Mr. Fox, and I think Mr. Yelton would agree. We arranged for him to have an opportunity to come in and view any of those work orders that he wanted to. Now, we wouldn't have just done that for Mr. Yelton. He's a frequent visitor, and we know him well. We'd have done that for anybody sitting in this room.
And he's bringing his own copy machine.
And he did. I'll applaud you on that, Don. You did. You brought your own copy machine. Because when you asked about using ours, we said that's 5 cents a copy. But it did. But my point is transparency and honesty. That's how we run this system. And that's how I truly believe the silent majority of Buncombe County realizes that. So anybody in this room, we welcome you to come down there. Mr. Fox, we got a pretty big conference room. I don't know if we can hold everybody in here, but we'll try. We'll try. It's important to note that our school system makes every effort to follow, and in fact, in almost everything, we typically go well beyond the requirements of North Carolina General Statute. In this case, it's Chapter 121 and 132. And I say this in the fact that all maintenance work orders since 2004 have digital backups. Now follow me with that. We've got an insinuation that there's a conspiracy of shredding paper, and we've got digital backups on all of it. Digital backups. Everybody hear that loud and clear. That's transparency, ladies and gentlemen. That's honest. That's the facts. I think the person that asked for that is still in the room. In addition, we consistently adhere to the schedules for disposal provided through the Division of Archives and History for Local Education Agencies, LEA. And I can provide that web link to anybody that wants to stay after this long meeting. Meetings are getting pretty long. I'll stay right here till the last person leaves to give you that link. You can check on that. That's transparency. The schedule relevant to the August 12 board session allowed these specific records to legally be disposed of. The schedule is followed on a consistent and semi-annual basis through the approval of you, all 7 individuals up here, the board, as an entity. As you may recall, at the last board session, and this is very important, this is facts. We process over 20,000 work orders per year. Over 20,000. Annual basis. And so I've asked Mr. Fox tonight, because I want him to address the board and talk to you about the process. Transparency. And let me tell you, my reputation, and anyone's welcome to ask anyone that I've been associated with in my career. And I think you're going to find out I'm an honest person. May do a lot of things wrong, but I'm an honest person. I know honest people. Mr. Greg Fox, our maintenance director, you don't get any more honest than Mr. Fox. We've also, because of this accusation, we've asked 2 other individuals, and I appreciate your time on a long evening. That's Mr. Matt Stone, and Mr. Stone is the director of Buncombe County Inspections Department. We appreciate you being here. And an old friend, Mr. Terry Gentry, who is the Chief Fire Marshal of Buncombe County, because I want both of them to address this issue. And I apologize for getting a little emotional with people out there. I usually keep my cool. But let me tell you, when I see people challenged in a department that I know is as dedicated and works as honestly and efficiently as this department does, I get a little emotional. So, Mr. Fox, can you take me down the decibel here?
Thank you, Dr. Ball, for the comments, Mr. Board, and Chairman. I do want to say that we have all those work orders filed at the maintenance department. Nothing has ever happened in those work orders. We have over 100,000. The documents that were going to be disposed of, they're there. So where the accusation come from, I have no clue, and we certainly take offense to that, because there is no shredding of maintenance work order documents. Only a document that's ever been shredded was approved by this board. This accusation is certainly offensive to us. As Dr. Baldwin mentioned, we do over 20,000 work orders per year. That's a lot. We cover over 5.5 million square feet out there, schools, 42 sites, over 1,270 acres are out there. We mow the lawns. We do everything that most folks don't want to do. We replace toilets. I can tell you all the things that from plowing snow, that's a work order. To cleaning out the gutters, that's a work order. To taking care of the heating system, that's a work order. In the difficult economic times that we've been having, we're doing more and more in-house to try to help this system. We have a qualified staff. I put my staff against anybody in the state. I'm licensed. I have, just my electrical department has 5 state licensed electricians in it. We just finished 2 project lead-the-way labs that were computer labs. Call for inspection, we passed our inspections. That's what we do. We've doing more and more in-house. We got with the Buncombe County Inspections Department, and we came up with a great process that we feel is helped us all be more efficient and doing it safely. We've got blanket permits for every one of our schools out there. We brought it with us if you guys are interested in seeing any permit for any school. We pull individual permits for larger projects. I can go on all day about this, guys, but we try our best. I'm proud of Buncombe County Schools. I grew up in Buncombe County Schools. I'm a military veteran. I've got 25 years next month is my background in Buncombe County Schools. I'm proud to say that I'm a Buncombe County Schools employee. We do our very best. We're not perfect, but I can tell you, we've got some qualified guys that our hearts are in this system. Our lives are in this system. So I do appreciate the support that you guys have given us. I'd like to introduce Matt Stone, Director of Buncombe County Inspections, to come and explain the process. And come on up, Matt.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I only want to add a couple of things. As Dr. Baldwin said, I'm Director of the Permits and Inspections Department for Buncombe County. We do all the permitting services for all of the school systems, all the Buncombe County school systems, facilities, any buildings on any of the campuses. Really what we did was, and this is actually, it's not something I can probably take credit for. It's something the city has done on a similar basis with these types of facilities, and it's to address like maintenance and repair work. I don't know if you have any particular questions about that type of work, or the permits that go with that.
Board, do you guys have any questions or comments you'd like to
What's
make?
the dollar threshold? Is there a dollar threshold we have to get a clear permit?
Well, there is for commercial work. It's $5,000 is the cutoff for the very first threshold. And what we've done with that is we've taken what they've done in previous work as far as POs go. And then what they'll do with that is they'll take that information, that's what we've applied to that permit. We'll go back and audit those. If it exceeds that threshold, then we'll come back and bill them for a different amount.
I have a question, as to, you said you developed a new process, I guess, starting earlier this year, working with the maintenance departments to get permits or whatever they need. Is this an annual process?
In this particular case, what it is an annual process. It's going to run through the fiscal year. It only covers maintenance work. So that is minor repair work, service work, things of that nature. It will not, for example, you could come in and replace a switch or something of that nature, a ballast in a fixture. That's maintenance work. You come in and add a receptacle or plug, or you change these lights to different fixtures that are not like in kind, then it comes out of the scope of the maintenance work. The maintenance work is just basically what we talked about. Repairs for like-in-kind service work, minor maintenance, replacing parts on a compressor, for example, would be a maintenance item where you come in and you change that particular unit out as opposed to just doing maintenance work on it, then that is a separate permit. And this is only applicable to maintenance staff with Buncombe County. If you hire someone else, then they pull separate permits for the work they did. And it is, according to general statute, it is a requirement for that particular contractor when you bring them on. It is their obligation to pull those permits. It's not the school's obligation to pull a permit for that individual.
So if let's say you have an electrical switch that needs to be replaced, that wouldn't necessarily have to be inspected, correct?
Yes, if you're replacing that out, that becomes a maintenance item, not some type of minor repair work. Servicing equipment, like I said, there's certain parts. And each board's a little different, and I say each board because each board, whether you're an electrician, you're licensed by a separate board, and possibly plumbing and mechanical, you can get different interpretation from each board as to what may or may not require a permit. So there are some gray areas. And Greg's always been good, or his staff has always been good to call someone within our office and say, is this an item that we need to permit? We weren't sure, and some of the stuff, we have to go back and double check just because you all have some unusual items within the system, whether it's equipment or things of that nature that may not typically be what we deal with on a normal basis.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Stone, did I understand you to say that in the event the expense of whatever activity we were going to have to repair required something over $5,000, that we would get a contractor?
No, I'm sorry. Basically, what we did is they took money they had spent on previous work, let's say for a particular campus, and we would base that maintenance permit fee on the money that they had spent on previous work, historical data. And then we would base it on that. If they exceed that threshold, then it just goes into, as you pointed out, a different permit fee. It has nothing to do with who can do the work. Your license to do the work, the only threshold you have is as it relates to building, is work that exceeds $30,000. That's when you get into general contractors. The other work they're performing, they're licensed to perform regardless of that threshold.
Thank you. I have another question for clarification. In the event that we had to get someone to do that kind of work, that was that kind of expense, did I understand you to say it is the responsibility of the contractor to get the permit and not Buncombe County Schools?
Yes, if you're contracting with them, technically the work that they're doing within maintenance is not contracting. They're not going out and contracting work, so they don't meet the true definition. When you bring in a licensed person to do that work, then yes, it is their responsibility both through general statutes and through the licensing board rules, that they're required to pull their own permits.
Thank you.
Now, is there any charge for the permits to Buncombe County Schools for this annual permit or any other permits that have to be obtained?
Yes, it's based on value of the work. So in this particular case, if you relate just to the maintenance permits, we started out at the beginning threshold, up to $0 to $5,000 to $75. If they exceed that, then they would come back in. We'd have an additional fee. Commercial work is based on value. So, for example, if you contracted someone to do some work on the mechanical side, let's say it was $10,000, from $5,000 to $10,000, then that fee becomes $100, and it just escalates based on the project cost.
And I believe that's the same if you're doing work at your home. Is that correct?
That's true for all commercial work. Residential permit fees are done differently than the commercial.
I'm aware that most school systems don't have to pay permit fees, because if you think about it, you're the government entity, you're charging another government entity that it's the same money you gave us. The county money goes to the maintenance department, and then you're getting it back. I mean, is there a way we can work with you guys that we don't have to pay these permit fees?
That is above my pay grade.
I think that's a discussion we need to have.
It's possible it was done at one time. I'm not 100% sure. I started in '94. It could have been done back then. I wasn't involved with that. I was in the inspection side. I wasn't involved with the administrative side. It's possible at some point in time it was done that way.
Well, I'm just saying, is this something, who can we talk to, because...
I think Joe Belcher can help us with that.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
That's on the list.
I think that's something we need to discuss with the county commissioners.
I think we need to, because I think most school systems are not charging for permits for their maintenance department, and, I mean, everybody knows how crunched we are anyway, and just to take more away from us, that doesn't look good.
Are you asking just to not charge the maintenance department, or are you saying to not charge any work on the school system?
Just the maintenance
Okay.
department.
Okay.
All right,
And
let's keep moving along. I think we're
Well, I'm
along
going to say, I mean,
steadily
there
here.
is another issue as far as the contractors too. I think in some school districts, they do work out something that we might want to look into, so we don't have, the contractors don't add that cost into the charges, they give us, but they have other school districts waive those fees. They have waived for fees even for contractors that are working on the school system. And I think our county commissioner supports the schools enough that they would listen to this proposal.
Okay.
I do know we bill contractors that do work for Buncombe County.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Stone?
I do have another question, I'm sorry. I meant to ask earlier. What precipitated this change earlier this year going to this annual permitting process? Is there something that precipitated the change?
Actually, what had happened is Mr. Fox just asked that we schedule a meeting to see if we could streamline the process, and it's beneficial to both sides. I say that in the sense that it allows Mr. Gentry, who's in the schools on a regular basis and is also a level 3 electrical inspector, to assist us with some of the inspection work. So some of the work we can schedule. In other words, it does not have to. We try to do everything the same day. With the maintenance work, it allows us to schedule around depending on the nature of the work, some of our inspections. It just gives us a little more leeway. So it's really mutually beneficial.
And you said this is something that the city of Asheville has been doing for a number of years, or?
Yes, I spoke with Mark Casey, he's the assistant director. They do it with their school system, if I'm not mistaken. I think they also do it with Mission Hospital.
Okay.
Do we know if the city charges for permits for the school system, for Asheville City Schools? Maybe we can find out.
My assumption would be yes, but that's all it is, ma'am, just an assumption.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Stone, thank you.
Let me introduce Terry Gentry. He's our Chief Buncombe County Fire Marshal.
Mr. Chairman, Board, Dr. Baldwin, I'm Terry Gentry. I'm the Deputy Fire Marshal for Buncombe County. I work for Buncombe County Emergency Management. just to give you a little background on me and what I do for the schools or to the schools, just depends on who you talk to and which way they will take. And a lot of the staff in here will back me up on that. I think I'm well known. I don't think I'm well liked. North Carolina General Statute requires that every public school be inspected twice a year, a minimum of 90 days apart. I can inspect more than twice a year, but a minimum of twice a year. I'm also a level 3 electrical inspector, a level 3 fire inspector. The general statute requires an electrical inspection and a fire inspection. My job was somewhat created so that I did both inspections. Everybody's trying to save money. The county was trying to do the same thing, one inspector doing both inspections at the same time. So I am qualified to do both. In what Mr. Stone was saying, a lot of the maintenance work, and what Mr. Reinhardt said earlier, does anybody inspect the switch when it's replaced? Unfortunately for your staff, yes, I do. I know, it's scary how much I know about Buncombe County schools after doing this I've been with the Fire Marshal's office 14 years. So I'm very aware of the schools. Some other things that you should know is, anytime there's fire alarm work, sprinkler work, anything like that, part of the process is there has to be a separate permit from the Fire Marshal's office approving that. The plans are generally engineer drawn. They are submitted to our office. They are reviewed. If they are approved, there's a permit from our office also issued for them. They are inspected during construction, and there's an acceptance test on the systems conducted by our office. So we can tell you that yes, on this given day at this time, it did work like the code requires it to do. A few other things, like I say, I inspect schools twice a year. I'm also part of something that I think Dr. Baldwin was very instrumental in before he was superintendent, the Safe Schools program. As part of emergency management, I deal with that a lot. So, like I say, I'm in the schools a lot. I'm a graduate of Buncombe County Schools. My kids one of them is now a graduate of Buncombe County Schools, the other one's still there. Personally, I think we've got one of the safest school systems in the state. I have been fortunate enough to visit a lot of other schools. I welcome any of y'all that want to go through with me anytime I'm doing an inspection. You're more than welcome to go, as long as you meet that particular school's requirement to be in the school. That's the only thing I will say. Being part of Safe Schools, they have visitor policies. I have to identify myself and things like that. So as long as you're willing to do that, you're welcome to go with me with the school's permission. Y'all have any questions? I'll shut up if you don't.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you would say all the fire alarm systems in our schools have been inspected and passed, and
Yes, ma'am.
and the electrical inspection on those also?
Yes.
They've all passed. I have a question that's been brought to my attention by a constituent that the company that services those systems has never applied for a permit from Buncombe County, and Matt Stone can probably verify that as well. I have a stack right here for the last 3 years, and their name is not in here.
I cannot speak as to whether they are getting permits from Permits and Inspection Department, but before they can do any fire alarm installation, they have to have a permit from the Fire Marshal's office. If they are found to be doing work without a permit from our office, they are fined. They stop the work until they get everything approved, and then they can continue.
Now, this is a separate permit, I assume they have to get for the electrical wiring part of that.
That would be a question
And that
for
would be
Mr.
a
Stone.
permit they would have to acquire from Mr. Stone's
Yeah.
office.
Yes.
Well, I think, Mr. Gentry, if I'm wrong, you're talking about when one is installed initially, there's a permit, and then anytime one is inspected, there's another permit, or if there's any significant work.
If there's any significant work.
So when there's like a routine
It's just
inspection.
a routine inspection by the alarm company, which fire code requires all alarms have an annual certification.
Right.
There is not a permit for that. That
Okay.
is,
Right.
that, you know,
But obviously, like, we're finishing up 2 new schools, I mean, there was a permit for that.
There was a permit.
Inspections and those sorts of things, but you're not gonna have a permit every time that system is looked at.
no, but if there's any work done on it other than, you know, any significant work.
Right.
You know, if you change, well, like fire alarm system, if you change the fire alarm panel, you will have a permit for that.
Right.
You know, anything like that.
I'm not trying to shoot the messenger, there's some concerns that have been raised about whether contractors have gotten permits, to do work. And the work orders are a crucial part of solving this mystery. The only thing I have are the list of permits for the last 3 years, and then the list of, payments that have been made to companies. And I don't have, you know, what we need to do is compare these
Right.
3 items. And that's what last month I called for this audit, that wasn't seconded, but we'll see, we'll try this again later, but, you know, my big concern is, you know, that these permits haven't been obtained, properly by contractors, yet Buncombe County Schools paid the money for the work, didn't see an inspection, report to know that, you know, that it was done, you know, so that schools are safe, that the work was done properly.
Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I just want to remind board members again that anytime you have a concern or receive a complaint, you have an entire paid staff, including a superintendent whose job it is to get answers so that it's not speculation. So I just want to remind everyone, if you have a concern, if you get a concern, bring it to the superintendent. None of this requires board action. This is what the superintendent and Mr. Fox and his staff do on a daily basis. And if there's a concern that a law's been violated or something hasn't been done correctly, all you have to do is tell the superintendent. And it's his job to be investigated.
I've been doing this for the past 3 months or more.
I'm simply reminding the board that if you will give the superintendent the concern, the person who made the concern, and any facts you have, it can be investigated. That does not require an audit.
Mr. Seidel?
I want to make sure I understand from a safety standpoint. One of your jobs is inspection of schools
Yes.
in Buncombe County twice a year.
Yes, sir.
At every one of the school facilities. And you've been doing this for how long?
I've been in fire marshal's office 14 years to get the qualifications to do both inspections of fire and electrical for 10 years.
Okay. So for at least the last 10 years, you've been doing this work in Buncombe County schools?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For kind of the dual purpose, the electrical and the
Yes.
fire?
However, I'm not the only inspector going through.
I understand. My question is this, from a safety standpoint.
Yes, sir.
Your inspections have indicated that our fire systems are safe in the schools and meet the requirements for appropriate fire systems in the school, fire safety systems in the
The
schools.
fire alarms meet the NFPA 72 standard for the time that they were installed.
All right. And that's the requirement that we have for the inspections in each of these school facilities?
Yes, sir.
So, I know you've indicated that you have a student in one of the schools.
Yes, sir.
Is there any concern that you have with regard to the lack of the safety as it relates to those fire systems that you've been inspecting in these schools?
No, sir, and this may have been brought to somebody's attention, and I'll mention it, just, you know, the fire alarm system's like anything else. There will be times when you will have one part go out or something. You can go back and look at all the copies of inspection reports. Sometimes you will see documentation that, because my inspections, copy goes to superintendent's office, copy goes to maintenance, copy stays with me, copy stays at school. Sometimes you may see fire alarm system showing trouble documented on there. One one of the fortunate things, and I consider this fortunate being a parent, anytime I run across anything like that, before I've even written it down, I've been on the phone to someone from maintenance and advising them, all right, I'm at this school, you've got a problem. Before I can finish the inspection, they're telling me exactly what the problem is. You know, most of the time it's fixed. By the time I've written it down, I could write out beside it correct. But it's something, you know, I take the safety of Buncombe County Schools very serious, and that's the reason a lot of the staff in here, I won't say they like me, but they all know me because of that reason.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question. I'm looking at the fire inspection form right now. Is this the same, are we talking about the same form as the North County School fire inspection form?
I can't see the form you're looking at, but I would say so.
From DCI. Well, this doesn't, I guess the only thing on here, it says fire alarm detection equipment is in proper working order so that all occupants can hear the signal. Is that really the only inspection point for
No.
the system?
It has to comply with NFPA 72.
Well, I think it's important for the board to realize, all the board members and people that are here, that, you know, when an accusation is made, any type of accusation, it's important for us as board members or members of staff to be upfront and as honest as possible with Dr. Baldwin. It's really easy for someone to throw out a broad allegation, but, you know, to have contact with the person making the allegation and also to have a specific example of what's going on helps Dr. Baldwin or any superintendent in their investigation. And so to throw out a broad accusation and it needs to be backed up and with more information so that Dr. Baldwin can investigate properly. And I think that's important for everyone. You know, there's probably, I mean, I know that Mr. Gentry has said numerous times if it doesn't get fixed, they're going to shut the doors, they're going to chain the doors shut to schools, and that would not be good. Fortunately, he hasn't done that yet. But, you know, I think our staff is very, works very hard to meet. Mr. Gentry, would you agree that we try to meet any safety concerns that you have in a timely manner to make sure that the schools are as safe as possible?
Definitely.
Okay.
And like I say, with having kids in the system, I have traveled all over the state into other schools, going with my kids, and y'all have a school system to be proud of. And I talked to a lot of inspectors across the state, the other fire marshals. They will, if you want to hear horror stories, talk to them. But
well, one thing that you mentioned the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association standards.
Yes.
Those are updated every 5 years, and so a system. I'm assuming that fire alarms are the same 5-year update. So technically, you can have a fire alarm system that's operational and functioning, but after 5 years, it may not meet the current NFPA standard. It meets the standard that it was when it was installed.
exactly.
And we have other equipment in the school systems that, HVAC systems, those sorts of things. They may not meet the most current standard, but we try to maintain them as best that we can. And unless every 5 years you're going to replace all that equipment to meet the new standards, then you have to do your best to try to, it's not saying that it's unsafe. It's just saying that it doesn't meet the current NFPA standard. So I think it's important for folks to realize that.
Well, with you mentioning that, just one thing to add. One thing about the International Fire Code, it's one of the codes that's considered a living code. There's not really a grandfather died with it. So as code changes, in a lot of aspects, you have to come up to the current code.
Okay.
So there are situations where you may wonder why. Well, we just did this. Why did we have to change it? And it's because of the code change.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question for both of you.
Okay.
So it's very simple. You gentlemen find us in compliance with most all federal and state regulations and local regulations.
As far as the annual school inspections, Terry can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, anytime I do an inspection, I will be honest, I don't think there's a school, I've never found a violation, but everything that I'm checking, I would challenge you to keep on where I couldn't find anything, because you have big facilities, but all in all, you know, there's never anything major. If I find something that I consider major, it's dealt with immediately.
Mr. Weiss, I would say that's kind of a hard question to answer, because unless you tear the school completely apart and inspect everything, it's going to be hard to say that every school meets everything 100% compliance-wise. Would you agree?
But, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe I heard Mr. Jones say that in the event that he found an infraction, he calls maintenance and they immediately respond. Is that a correct statement?
That is a correct statement if it is something significant. I mean, the emergency light on the wall right over there. If the battery was dead in it, I don't consider that necessarily a major, batteries go dead, walls burn out. I don't consider that a major problem. If I was in this facility and I went to the sprinklerizer and there's no water on it, that's a major thing.
Sure.
Or if I went to the fire alarm panel and it was showing out of service, that's a major. And those things they address immediately.
If I could, the only thing I would like to add to this statement is any permitted work that has been done through whether it was done in-house through the maintenance staff or whether it was contracted out, then all those permits are closed out, so they are in compliance at the time that we go through and do our last inspections.
And I just wanted to clear up a rumor that I've heard, Mr. Stone, that a contractor came by your office and was interested in getting a permit for work that had already been done at Buncombe County Schools. Was that rumor true?
I don't know if it's true. If they would have asked, then yes, we would issue the permit. Our permit fee schedule allows to double the permit fee for a fine. But our biggest goal is to get them permitted and get them in compliance.
Right.
So
if somebody didn't get a permit, they can still come back now and just pay double.
Yes.
Okay.
And that work can still be inspected after the fact.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for staying as long as you have.
And I will give the name. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know, I will give, I got the names of the companies today from some individuals who are very concerned about safety issues with the school system. I will give the names of those companies to Dr. Baldwin.
Companies
that did not get permits to do work.
That would be great. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to board directives to the administration. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask the administration to look into tonight? Moving on to
I have a motion. I was waiting to see if anybody else did. I move that we, as a board, request the following materials from the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources to include, but not be limited to, the corrective action plan developed in the mid-90s for this hazardous waste site, also contaminant plume maps, test results from all monitoring wells recorded since their installation in the mid-1990s, as well as the 1989 environmental study conducted prior to the purchase of this property. Can we read it again?
Is there a second?
Is that a directive to the administration, or are you just making a motion?
That's a good point.
I'm not sure where
we can direct the administration to request these materials, or we can request it.
And I think it would be appropriate for Dr. Baldwin, even before a second, for informational reasons, to address what we do have from Diener, what our understanding is with Diener about information that they may send us. I don't, as the attorney, I don't think anyone has a problem with the motion, but is that already in process as far as us getting full copies of Diener records. My understanding is Diener has allowed inspection of everything they have. Now, if we want to go make copies, I think they'll let us. So I just, for clarification, the motion may be unnecessary. Because my understanding is in Mooresville, North Carolina, there are boxes that members of the public have seen and school employees have seen, and if we want to make a copy of everything in those boxes, we can. So I don't know, I just wanted y'all to know that. I don't think it's necessarily, I don't know, I leave that up for the board to discuss whether you want to actually ask for a copy of everything.
If you can second the motion, and then we can talk
But I don't know
about
if the motion, they've already allowed inspection, and we'd probably be fine with it. Is that accurate? Ms. Blunt?
You've got your workshop coming up. It's my understanding from Kathy Ackroyd at Diener, they are working to get information up on their website. She did not give me a date when I checked with her today.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll just say ahead of time that if you listen to Dr. Baldwin's comments, I mean, basically this is what's getting ready to happen. I mean, there's another well that's going in place that there will be results from, and I think once we have all of the results and not just some of the results, then as a board we can make an informed decision as how we want to proceed. There's obviously some things that are already happening that the administration is working on, so I don't really think that this motion is necessary because we are planning to have a board work session where all this is going to be laid out, as much of the history that can be collected and presented, as well as past results, the most current results, as well as the steps that are really recommended by Diener as far as the recommended next steps to make sure that we're doing this properly. So it's my recommendation that we let the administration continue with what's happening. We'll sit down at the work session and have all the information presented to us. After that work session, the board should decide exactly how we want to proceed. And the main question that needs to be answered is this building safe? Period. The building is safe to be occupied.
And I think, Bob, that's exactly my point. Since the mid-1990s, these monitoring wells have been in place due to the fact that actually within 9 months of the purchase of this property in 1989, 61 boreholes were drilled, and they found TCE contamination, arsenic, mercury, and lead.
That's not, for clarification, that's not 61 boreholes on our property.
Well, right, it's on the hazardous waste site, which includes across the street.
Which there are 4 on our property.
These are, well, the boreholes are different than the wells that were drilled later.
So we have 4 on our property.
We have 4 monitoring wells on our property. No, this 61 number is something different. I think there may be 30 monitoring wells in all, counting across the street. I haven't counted the exact, 20 to 30 in all.
There's more than that.
So, I mean, okay.
Can I ask a point of information, Chair? I think the public as well as this board needs to understand the complexity that we're dealing with goes all the way back to the initial letter that I received as superintendent, which identified essentially the building of classrooms on 128 Bingham Road. 128 Bingham Road, to get there, we leave this particular building, we walk all the way to the back entrance exit, and we walk across Bingham Road. There are more monitoring wells than that. In fact, if you recall, at the work session, I gave each board member a copy of a map that shows where those wells were. Not only 175 Bingham Road, which is where we are currently located, but 128, which contains the vast majority of boreholes, monitoring wells, and that is the complexity that we're dealing with now. Because Diener, when we talk about corrective action plan, we have to understand that the majority of that corrective action plan, and Mr. Kowalik, you're our expert, Mr. Fox, you talked with Diener, the majority of that plan doesn't have anything to do with 175 Bingham Road. As you pointed out, there were four monitoring wells. It actually, more accurately, I'm going to say, Greg, probably 3.5, 2.5 up at the road, nearest 128 Bingham Road, and then the one nearest our maintenance building.
That's correct.
But the majority of that corrective action plan and the focus, we can assure you, in speaking with Diener and speaking with Square D on a pretty regular basis, the complexity of this is that they are putting tremendous focus, unlike, I probably shouldn't say this, unlike our local media, they're putting the majority of their focus on 128 Bingham Road. We're certainly looking at the results that I know a number of you board members have looked at. It makes sense. But as Mr. Reinhardt says, we do understand that there is clearly a plan that an additional well be drilled within the proximity of our building to allow us an additional information, which is extremely important because that has much more relevancy to the safety of our building, which I know all 7 board members are concerned with. That is very relevant information for us to try to provide you prior to that is going to truly be incomplete. But understand the complexity we're dealing with is as much the addresses and the difference between 175 and 128 Bingham Road and the complexities of the problems and the severity of the problems.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess my point in making this motion is that I got on the board in 2010. Nobody ever told me about this contamination. I was on a STEM high school committee that started meetings the fall of last year. Nobody in that committee was told that there was, toxic waste right here. Yet plans went on, architect drawings were done to renovate this into a STEM high school until I stumbled on some information that we were on a hazardous waste site list, and I called Diener because I asked Dr. Baldwin. He said he didn't know about this. And he said he would ask the maintenance director. He didn't get back to me. I asked Diener. They looked into it, found the 4 file boxes, found out we were part of the hazardous waste site. To say I'm impatient is an understatement because the people in this building and the students who've been in this building, since the early 90s, nobody's known about this contamination other than, I guess, the administration. I'm not sure who has been not monitoring the situation. And right now, I understand every time they test these wells, they draw a contaminant plume map. So there is an indication of where this toxic waste is traveling, what direction it's going in, and that's why we need this historical data to see where this plume has been traveling. I have the floor.
Ms. Bowen, I agree.
I have the floor still.
Go ahead.
Do I have to ask your opinion? I'll ask
No,
your
ma'am, I was
opinion.
going to agree with you. The thing I wanted to make sure you understood is that all this information that is available again has been made available to staff. There's going to be a work session. The administration is working on it to bring it forward. So
yeah, they're dragging their feet. The feet are
Ms. Baldwin,
being
that is not correct. That is
your
your opinion. These things take
Okay,
time.
my opinion is that the feet are being drugged.
Well, I'm sorry it's not happening on your
Because the test
time, but
results
they're working
came
on
back.
it, and they're going to get to us in a work session and give us as much information as they can.
I know. The fact that we're still in this building, we're meeting in here, and we don't know if it's safe. That's another big issue. I have the floor, Mr. Sizemore.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
We do not know. The air quality has never been tested in this building. To be proactive as a board, we need to make a motion, and we did at the last meeting, made a motion that was unanimously supported to have independent testing done, not only of the water, but the soil and the air quality. Even people who would be renovating this building are at risk of digging up some soil, that has the heavy metals I mentioned, the TCE contamination. We don't need to, it's been a month since that last meeting. What are we waiting for to happen? I hope we get copies of everything in those file boxes. That's what this motion is intended for, to get information.
This board is responsible, according to General Statute 115C40, for the general control and supervision of all school system activities. We are to provide oversight, in other words, and it's our duty to take the lead and direct the administration to get this done, to get this information together. I thought we would have it by this meeting at the latest, and we still don't have it. There's plenty of historical data we could start digging through and going over. I'm not sure one meeting is sufficient to cover all of the information in those 4 file boxes as far as the historical timeline is concerned. As you know, I've been trying to get a hold of the 1989 environmental study that was done prior to the purchase of this building. Nobody has it. Our board attorney is the legal custodian of this document, and he doesn't have it. He doesn't know who has it. The environmental company that did the study says they don't have it. I want to know what's going on around here. You know, frankly, this level of incompetence should not be tolerated by this board. And we need to take action tonight. We need to get those files copied and get them here, or we need to take a trip down to Morrisville and look at those boxes and see what's in there. Because this has been hidden from the public. Talk about transparency. Nobody knew about this. You know, a board member, I'm not sure if you board members knew about this or not. I mean, I came on in 2010 as the newest one. Nobody told me there was any contamination here. They misled the STEM high school committee. Nobody was looking into this. It doesn't make sense. I want some answers.
Ms. Baldwin, I'd like to ask you a question. Ms. Baldwin, when did you first, because it sounds like you've been looking at this for a while, when did you first contact Dean or Mr. Carlo, I think is her name, et cetera, and begin to ask questions and gather information?
Well, I ran across the inactive hazardous waste sites list in January, and I sent all of you a link to the Mountain Express article that describes the 50 different inactive hazardous waste sites in Buncombe County. And let me clarify, those are inactive because nobody is investigating them. Then I called Diener before I talked to Dr. Baldwin because I didn't know if we were on the list because it said 128 Bingham Road. After being transferred to different offices, I finally ended up with the Morrisville office on the phone, Donna DiCarlo.
Would it be fair to say, just to cut through it, March, January, February, March, in that time frame?
Sometime in the spring, I would say that Donna verified with me that we were part of the site, and she then asked for Dr. Baldwin's contact information. I contacted him as well when I found out we were part of the site. That's when he told me he didn't know, and he would talk to the maintenance director, Mr. Fox, and get back with me, and he did not get back.
And you felt at that time we maybe had a problem?
Yeah, I was concerned.
Okay. I take offense to 2 things. Number one, the accusation that anyone on this board knew anything about this prior to when we all now know about it.
It wasn't an accusation.
Yes, it was. Second, it's incomprehensible to me if you genuinely felt we had a problem that you didn't bring it up at the time. I never got a phone call. I never got a phone call from you stating we might have a problem here.
It's a personal attack.
Never got that phone call. My wife works in this building. Okay? I'm in this building all the time. There's a lot of people who work in this building. If you had information, we might not still be here today waiting for answers. We might have gotten to this quicker. That bothers me. As a member of this board,
I have no idea why you're pointing the finger at me. I'm the messenger is being shot down here.
Why?
That is ridiculous.
Why didn't you bring that forward?
Pat, I sent you an
Okay,
email.
folks, that's enough. That's enough. Okay? That's enough. So we have a motion. And we have a second. Would you restate your motion, please?
Can I ask for clarification? Is it a motion or for directives?
The directive to the superintendent is, I think,
Is
what we
that
follow.
correct, Ms. Baldwin?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just,
Hold on.
what, can I haven't said anything.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the one that seconded it, and I seconded it because if we didn't, the email that goes out like all these others, the Buncombe County School Board's trying to hide things.
And that's not what we're trying to do. But that, if I had seconded, it would say Buncombe County School Board reasons to investigate. And it makes us, I mean, but that's not what we're doing. You've heard that we're investigating. There's boxes that are coming. We're gonna have a workshop on it. So, I mean, I'm gonna vote against this because we're already doing it. I mean, it's redundant. But I just hope that the communication isn't that we're covering something up, as it usually turns out. Thank you.
No cover-up after 20-some years?
Please restate your motion, please.
Okay. I move that we as a board request the following materials from Diener to include, but not be limited to, the corrective action plan developed in the mid-90s for this hazardous waste site, contaminant plume maps, test results from all monitoring wells recorded since their installation in the mid-90s, as well as the 1989 environmental study conducted prior to the purchase of this property.
Okay, we already have a second. All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Vote them out. Election's coming soon, guys.
Yes, sir. Good night. All right, I'd like to make a motion that we allow the administration to continue what they have already started, and that they, as soon as the information is complete and available to us, that it be presented in a format that we all understand and can present it to everyone in the public.
Is that with regard to this environmental study?
Yes.
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right, moving on to announcements. This is not put on by Buncombe County Schools, but this Saturday from 9 to 5 there will be a workshop that teachers are invited to attend dealing with religion in schools.
I wasn't finished with my motions. I'm sorry to get a chance to get my words out. I move that we hold a public community meeting in conjunction with Diener and Square D officials to discuss the hazardous waste and corrective action plan.
Is there a second?
Question for clarification before that.
You have to have a second.
At what point?
Second on the motion.
Is there a second?
I might, did you have a date? I mean, is just to have a meeting, I mean, is that next week, next month? After we've had our work session? What's
The work session will be public.
I'm curious as to the intent of.
Well, we can't really discuss it. Let's,
Could you read it?
read it one more time, Ms. Baldwin.
I move that we hold a public community meeting in conjunction with Diener and Square D officials to discuss the hazardous waste and corrective action plan.
Is there a second? Is there a second? All right, the motion fails for lack of a second. Everyone's invited to the work session.
I have another, I'm not done, Bob. Chairman.
I know you're not. I didn't move on.
Oh.
Just give me just a second.
I apologize.
All right, go ahead.
I move that we as a board request accountability for funds spent on the Inca High School solar project, especially in light of the fact that we did not sign a contract with FLS.
Could you state that one more time?
Okay. I move that we as a board request accountability for funds spent on the Inca High School solar project, especially in light of the fact that the funds were spent without a signed contract with FLS.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, moving on.
Okay. Does anybody else have a motion? I move that the board receive a financial, wait a minute, let me stop a minute on that one. I think that one was answered earlier.
and, financial data of the summer feeding program.
Is there a second?
All right, moving on.
I move that this board start holding regular monthly work sessions.
Just 1 second.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat? Okay. I move that the board receive full disclosure of participation and financial data for the summer feeding program.
Okay.
Public request for information.
That was pretty much provided. All right, your next one?
There was no second. You
No.
just asked for one.
No, we already asked for one, no one seconded it, she was just getting the information on the computer.
Okay. I move that this board start holding regular monthly work sessions, as is the procedure in most school districts, to discuss agenda items and issues prior to the regular monthly meeting. Because, in light of the fact that
Ms.
the board
Baldwin, this is
comment
something that we
period
voted
has-
on several times, and, so,
Robert's Rules of Order says a motion can be brought to the floor as many times as necessary.
I guess we can be here all night, too.
Don't have that many more to go.
It's
I'll
not a
repeat
board
it.
directive also.
Let me repeat.
It's not a board directive.
Again, the purpose of board directives was if the board wanted the staff to look into an issue and report back. That was the purpose of board directives on the agenda.
Well, again, Robert's Rules of Order, you can make a motion.
Then you're subject to the agenda.
That you
If
want.
there is a time in which you can make motions related to a specific topic, you cannot make motions outside of that specific topic.
When
But
there is
that's the
no board
purpose of
comment
this.
period, I can't make the motion if there is no opportunity.
The board directive purpose is to ask the administration to review.
Okay, then I'll rephrase the motion. I move that this board ask the administration to look into how we might start holding regular monthly work sessions, as is the procedure in most school districts, in order to discuss agenda items and issues prior to the regular monthly meeting, especially in light of the fact that the board comment period has been removed from the agenda.
Is there a second? Motion fails. Directive fails.
I move that we look into, that we have direct the administration to look into the possibility of obtaining fee waivers for permits for electrical, mechanical, plumbing, construction permits.
I'll second that. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yay.
And my last motion,
Yeah.
I move to go into closed session following the board meeting in order to discuss the topics brought up by Mr. Jerry Rice, and I would also move that we, and also include Mr. Rice in that session as allowable by law, by open meetings or by closed meeting law.
Is there a second?
I'm not sure I understand. Do you mind
I can
repeating
say that
it?
again. I move that we go into closed session tonight to discuss the issue brought up by Mr. Jerry Rice during the public comment tonight, and invite Mr. Rice to present to us in closed session.
Just as a point of information, the practice has been to ask that personnel complaints be made to the superintendent so that he can look into them in the first instance. I don't know if Mr. Rice has talked to Dr. Baldwin, but that has been the practice of this board for as long as I've been associated with this board.
Is there a second? All right. Next.
I'm finished, Mr. Chairman.
All right, one announcement I was asked to make, invited to attend. It's from 9 to 12 on Saturday. And then there's also a parent meeting that's kind of on a similar topic, the West Asheville Baptist Church, from 6 until 8:30 on Saturday night. A regular board meeting scheduled for Thursday, October the 4th, Thursday, November the 1st, and Monday, December the 3rd. Please note, Monday, December 3rd will be a little different than the normal meetings. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.